Hello and welcome to Tomlin's Harmonica podcast, where I'll be hanging out with players and teachers and having conversations loosely based around harmonica. This week's guest is one of my favorite harmonica players on the circuit today. Not only is he a fantastic musician and performer, but he's also a brilliant teacher who works hard to share the tin sandwich with new audiences around the world through his YouTube channel, harmonica123.com, and more recently through the online Global Blues Harmonica Summit. He is my friend and teacher, Ronnie Shellist. Welcome to the show, Ronnie. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Tomlin. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. So whereabouts are you currently? Because you've just moved location, haven't you?
I have. I took the long journey from Denver, Colorado, out to Champaign, Illinois, which is my new hometown. And this is a place I've visited many years in a row, coming out here for music. There's a really nice blues scene out here, and finally just pulled the trigger. And I was like, I'm in the wrong spot in Denver, Colorado for what it is that I want to do. So my wife and I made the move about a month ago.
Very cool. And are you completely quarantined there at the moment, or have you been allowed out?
There's limited. They're asking everyone to stay home unless you're going to the grocery store or you have a medical emergency. You need to go see a doctor. But I'm noticing that when I run out to the grocery store, people are out and about. What they're doing, I'm not sure. Not much is open, but yeah, for the most part, we're pretty much tied up here at home.
Oh man, so not a huge amount of exploring your new town.
we had like a couple days where we're like, hey, we went out to dinner, we went downtown, and then it was like, stay inside. So yeah, at this point, we're inside, but we'll have plenty of time. We just settled into a brand new home. We're not going anywhere for any foreseeable future, anytime soon in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in that situation. I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about the last person I saw that wasn't my wife. Like the last friend that I actually saw, and that's a weird thought. It's like, hey, that Eddie came around for lunch like a day before shutdown, and
right. It's strange. And I got here and got to see a bunch of my friends that I already knew, and that was it. It's like other than there's a house concert actually I'm doing this weekend on Saturday with a buddy that lives just down the road. They don't want people even doing that, but, coming over and visiting. But I figure one person coming over, and I'm looking forward to seeing him. I've been here for almost a month, and I've seen him like once. So it's funny.
So is that a live stream house concert you're doing?
It is. That is on Saturday. My good buddy Andrew Duncanson, the lead singer, and he also plays guitar in the band as well, for the Kilbourne Alley Blues Band with one L, Kilbourne. And he really is, in all honesty, my favorite singer right now on the scene. And he's coming over. We're doing a little duo show, and I think we're doing like a 12 p.m. Central show. People can learn about that at harmonica123.com. I put it typically under the I think it's the webinar or classes section of the website if you click on the store tab. But at any rate, that'll be fun to make some music. I'm like dying to play. So
yeah. Just a little side note, anything that you mention, like Kilbourne Alley Blues Band, I'm going to write up in the show notes below, so people can check it out and link to there. The only thing I will say is that this is going to go out after your live stream. So you might need to do some more.
It will be made available after the fact. If somebody really wants to catch it, just send me a message at Harmonica123 and I'll help you figure out how you can get to it.
That's very cool. Yeah, I was chatting about this with Rolly Platt, and he was saying that he gets a little bit kooky if he doesn't get to go outside and play like live. Like it's all well and good playing at home, but there's a certain energy that us musicians need to get out.
Yeah.
How are you dealing with that?
I'm a high energy individual. I have what I refer to as advanced ADD, and I I am very good when I'm focused making my videos. I'm busy teaching, and I have been extremely busy so far since the whole quarantine went down. But it's been raining a bunch here, and to not be able to get out and just take a walk, yeah, I've been a little stir crazy myself. I'm pretty sure my wife wants out. And it's only been 2 weeks, but yeah, I'm going a little stir crazy. I just need more exercise. I think that's the secret to it all. You gotta move, man. You gotta get physical. You gotta release that energy. And so playing is one side of it, and teaching and keeping mentally, stimulated. But after a while, you got to go take a freaking walk or a jog or something.
Yeah, you might not have been following this, but in the UK, the government have told us that we're all supposed to go for a run every day.
Really?
So if you look out of the window, there are just all of these very pink-faced people who clearly have never been running before, who are doing it for the first time. It's a really nice idea, but it means that it's quite stressful going anywhere outside because you're trying to kind of keep social distancing happening, and there are all these people running towards you. And like when I'm walking down the street, I look like one of those people who's on their way home from a late night event and has maybe had a few too many tequilas, and I'm moving from one side of the street to the other to avoid people.
Totally. Well, I mean, it is kind of interesting. There's a lot of what's the word? Contradiction, or sort of like, let's close all these places. All of our restaurants are closed, and they are in most places, I would imagine, but many are open for pickup only. But then you go to the grocery store, which that makes sense to me. But then you go to the grocery store, and not in Champaign, Illinois, but I'm imagining in bigger cities. Now you're in the middle of this store, and there's people everywhere all around you, and it's like, isn't this sort of defeat the purpose? I guess you have to go get your food. What are you going to do? It's non-negotiable, but I just try to limit my time outside. If I got to go to the store, it's there and back. I'm lucky here. It's not crazy. The stores aren't swamped. Yes, people have purchased all the toilet paper here in Champaign as well, but you get creative, folks. Don't let that get you down. You don't need toilet paper.
It is weird that's the thing collectively around the world that we were most upset about running out of, and like food is a lot more important.
No, toilet paper, Tomlin. Come on. And then what about water? Just your necessities. I heard for a while they were going to limit the this is becoming the quarantine podcast, but they were going.
That's what it is, man.
Yeah, just chat it up. They were going to limit potentially our our water, our electricity, I don't know to what degree, gas. And I was thinking, that's a lot more alarming than a lack of toilet paper. But that's just me, but I got to say, it has been one thing I noticed that's kind of cool from all this is the creativity that has spawned, that from what I see on Facebook, just not just people doing creative projects, but getting creative with how they're going to survive. All these opportunities that have vanished have forced everybody to rethink how they're going to survive. That's it, make a living. And even when it comes back, I keep thinking 3, 4, 5, 6 months when things slowly start to open and festivals are happening again and gigs are happening, the whole landscape has been changed now, and everything it's going to be new. I don't think anybody can predict exactly how uncertain that might be. I hate to say that, but I think that in the onset, a lot of people are going to want to get out because they're stir crazy from being in. So places like clubs and festivals will do very well. But I think in the long term, most people are going to be potentially hesitant to be in large crowds again from just how serious this has been. What do you think?
I think there'll be an element to that. I mean, to be honest, I think the first thing that everyone is going to do is go to the hairdressers. That's kind of priority one. Yeah. As soon as quarantine is lifted, all of these awful home cuts will be fixed. But yeah, people are going to be, well, I don't know. I think as a species, we have a tendency to celebrate hard when we can. And I think, you look at what happened after the Second World War, and everyone partied so hard, even though it was still kind of tough times for a while afterwards. But like everyone partied hard, everyone went home and had kids. Like it was a really positive time, and I kind of feel that maybe we'll get that as well. People are going to be really excited to be able to take advantage of the things that they've missed.
I hope you're right. And I think that there will be a lot of that. And it's just going to be, I'm just curious, I'm just curious to see how this all plays out, how things unfold as we move forward. All of us around the globe have been affected. So it's just going to be interesting to see the domino effect of where that takes us. I think a lot of good is going to come from it, though. The awareness and just sort of people changing their perception in some ways of, what's possible out there, and just to be a little more, not just the cautious part of it. There's just so many things, little things that have come about from this that have made us more aware, and maybe we'll become a little better as a population for that reason. Just because I feel like people live in their own with blinders on. We're like ants, when I would go around and I travel a lot. I'm like, we don't talk to each other anymore. I think that in some ways it'll change that part of it. I think that's a little bit of what you're saying. It kind of connected to what you're saying too. And we'll see, man. I'm just ready to get back to, I moved out here for one of the main reasons was to play more live music. I was already on the road playing, but like live somewhere where I could experience that more often. And here I am and I can't do it. And I don't know how long it'll be before. I'm guessing it could be, I don't know. What do you think? I'm thinking mid to late summer before anything late summer before things begin to sort of crop up again as legitimate opportunities to go out and play. And it's like, at least the saving grace is we're all in it together, man. So, yeah.
No doubt. So we just had an announcement today that all of the Edinburgh festivals are cancelled this year. So that's the International Festival, the Fringe Festival. So like all the stuff that people think of Edinburgh being famous for has been cancelled, and that's in August.
Right.
So I think
that's scary.
It is scary. It's going to be kind of interesting because there'll be loads of things that have been booked, September, October, November already, that those might be going ahead, but then there are all the people who got cancelled from March onwards who will want to reschedule. Like, how does that fit in? Right now, I'm supposed to be in Amsterdam watching Santana. That's where I'm supposed to be. And he actually cancelled his tour really early on, way before anyone was taking COVID seriously.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I remember being really angry because my flights were non-refundable, and now all the flights have been cancelled as well, obviously. So it's like, woohoo! I get my money back.
Right, or in many cases, you get a chance to at least use that value and rebook whenever you need to in a year or so. That's and that's cool. That there have been so many larger businesses and companies that have stepped up and sort of said, let's figure out something that makes sense, that is fair for everybody, because I had the same situation too with many of my flights. All these in-person events, like everyone else, are gone. But they will be rebooked, rescheduled, like the Carolina Harp Fest was one of them with Todd Parrott. He puts that on at the end of March. So I would have just finished that, and I would be on a cruise right now with Honer. And I'm very thankful that is not happening. But that would literally have been a back-to-back trip for me. And while that one won't rebook because you'll just have to wait the year to come back around that cruise, the Harp Fest will come back. So I know that it's a game of shuffling all these events and where will they fit and how can the same with the Kerrville Folk Festival. There's one that came up for me this year, which would have been May. Now they've already rebooked it for October. So there's a little bit of saving grace in this that they're really trying to preserve the events, but the problem is, how does a full-time artist get by in the interim? And you and I are fortunate because we spend a lot of time working online. And, we've got I've talked about this endlessly with friends and family and a little bit on social media, but my heart goes out to my good friends all around that are just trying to figure out how to survive right now. And so it's tough. It makes me very sad.
It is kind of insane. And I think you and I have chatted about this before, but we're kind of watching, sort of at the same time feeling incredibly grateful that we're already doing the online thing, and also feeling like how do we kind of support everyone. And it's just every person that I see posting something, and it's not just in the harmonica world, it's like every little business that's kind of like, if people buy these things, we'll be able to stay open for another few months. I was like, shit, I really want to, I don't even know what that thing is, but I want to help. And that's impossible to sustain. It's, I don't know. I'm seeing lots of positive from it in that the community feels like it's getting stronger. And I'm kind of hoping that doing these podcasts, it's a way for people to maybe be introduced to musicians that they don't know, and then they'll explore a little bit, and they'll kind of find out more about them if they like what they're saying when we're chatting. But then at the same time, a lot of the people who would be patrons to the musicians are also struggling and are in pain. And
that's right. The domino is hitting everybody. This is it's fascinating to me. Starting about 10 days ago, my email began blowing up, and I realized right away that was because more people were at home and they were looking for distraction, wanted to get back into taking some private lessons, wanted to learn about this class I was doing online and whatnot. And that trend has continued, for the most part. But there was a period where it was, whoa, is this the way it's going to be? And I don't think at all that has shifted. It's more like the beginning of this quarantine thing, blew that up. And I'm looking at my buddies in the harmonica world that are starting to offer some cool online events, which I'll begin promoting and pushing, and helping my fans find out about, because it is like you doing the podcast. That's great. I think it's a perfect way to make people more aware of other artists out there that are, that this is what they do for a living. And that includes you and I. We can also, pivot in these troubling times where we've lost these in-person events, and thinking about ways to support our friends that literally, a lot of them being musicians that have lost everything. And I think this is a great way. The podcast is a wonderful way to raise the awareness. And I know that I am going to try to find a simple way to just perhaps donate a percentage of some of my online events towards artists. The other way is I want to maybe do some free online things and just put these, PayPal links or something and say, please donate to these artists. Maybe do one at a time type of thing, like today's featured artist that I'm supporting, and put there. I think that's an easy way for me to give back. But it's tough because I've also had to make up a lot of lost money there. So this is interesting, man. But more importantly, it has brought so many of us together in a lot of interesting ways. It's like right here, right now. You would have been at a Santana concert. We would not be doing this.
No, and this, I mean, kind of quite selfishly, this is something that I've always wanted to do. I love listening to podcasts. I always thought it'd be cool to do a podcast, so it took a pandemic to make it happen. So I'll get ahead of the curve next time.
I love the idea. I've always had that idea in the back of my head. How cool would that be? And there's one other gentleman that I know that did some podcasting in the harmonica world, but I have a feeling that you're going to tap into the right artists, the right people that people want to be introduced to, and also talk about things that are going to be fun. I like that we're just chatting here, and that it does not have to be music centric or harmonica centric, but down the road, I'm assuming you might be doing more of that where it's just harmonica focused. Is that true, or am I totally wrong?
I don't know. So I mean, my plan and the way that I've promoted this so far is this is something that I'm doing for the duration of quarantine. I might carry on, but it is a chunk of extra work. Not in a bad way. It's I normally go for a nice long walk every day. I'm not doing that at the moment, so I'll hang out with one of my harmonica buddies on Skype and record it instead, which is lovely. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I like that it could be just a short series while everyone's stuck at home and want something a little bit lighthearted to listen to.
So people probably don't know this.
Yeah, you never know. It might carry on.
But you and I met in Edinburgh at your event, the Harmonica. What do you call that event?
The Edinburgh Harmonica Workshop.
Edinburgh Harmonica Workshop. And thanks to Tomlin, I got to go out and hang out and see his beautiful city, a city which I had actually spent one evening in many years prior, when I was a courier and had to deliver what they call a wafer. I told you this, right?
You did. This was such a weird story. You need to tell us about it.
It's not really that exciting. Let's keep the short version. I was a local delivery courier guy. This is many years ago. I'm still trying to play live music, and I was the part-time thing, still hanging on to part-time jobs at that time. And the job was horrible. They didn't provide me with enough work. I sat in my van outside of their warehouse most days. But one day, Tomlin, right before I was about to quit and say, screw you guys, they came up to me, my boss, and he says, you have a passport? I said, yes. Is it current? Yes. Can you get on a plane tonight and go to Edinburgh? And I said, yes. I thought to myself, well, this is the best thing that's come out of this job. Long story short, they had me carry what's called a computer wafer, which is the part of the computer that contains very sensitive information. So they wanted it hand delivered to the customer. So I got to go through London and then make my way out to beautiful Scotland. It was great. And the problem was I landed in the evening, and in the morning I flew out back to London to spend about a week. But it was enough to know that I wanted to go back there. So I appreciate you bringing me out there. That was just a wonderful little visit. Lee Sankey was there. Obviously you were there. Liam Ward was there, and we just had a great time bonding and teaching and playing and chatting it up. It was really nice. You really put on a great event, I gotta say.
Well, thank you. I have actually just cancelled this year's one, so
it's not a great segue, but
but there will be more. This is the thing. Like there will be more. I will do it next year. But I think that's the thing. That's the thing that I think everyone is missing right now, and we maybe don't miss it quite so acutely when it's easier to get to it. Yeah. I think people don't think about in-person events enough. But, teaching online is wonderful and learning online is wonderful. But there is something so incredible about seeing people in the flesh. And there was a guy at the Edinburgh Harmonica Workshop last year who asked me, so we run a jam session on the second night. And he said, Tomlin, do you think there's any chance that I can get up on stage and jam with Ronnie? And I was like, yeah, of course. So he got up and played with you. And then he got off stage and he was in tears. And I was just like this is incredible. And he said, this is the my life's ambition, to get up on stage and play with Ronnie, and I got to do it. And what was funny, I don't know if I told you this, but I'd been planning on never doing an in-person workshop ever again. And it was chatting to him. I was like, shit, this is so cool. I can't not be part of things like this.
It is the whole reason that I began even posting videos in 2006 on YouTube was for no other reason than to try to just share with family and friends when I saw that people tuned in and were like, we want more of this, every video since then has been about trying to give back what somebody gave me many years ago, and his name was Big Jack Johnson. For those of you that don't know him, he's a famous Delta singer, guitarist. He's passed now, but he has an album out with Kim Wilson called the Memphis Barbecue Sessions, which is probably one of my favorite recordings. And Big Jack basically, long story short, that was the first time I ever made music live that I ever got up was with him. I was in Florida. This is a good story. I was in Florida. I'll give you the condensed version, but basically I'm out there visiting my brother in Key West. This is like a year and a half or two into my playing. So I had a D harmonica in my pocket. He says to me, we're going to go to this blues club. He knew I loved blues. And he said, there's somebody playing there supposed to be pretty good tonight. I didn't know who Big Jack Johnson was. We walk in. I look to my right when we walk in the door, and on a bench is this guy decked out. He looks like royalty. And he's just sitting back, and it's Big Jack Johnson. Again, I didn't know. I didn't know if he worked there. I didn't know who he was. And I looked and I said, hey, how's it going? Just to say hello. And he goes, hey. I said, do you know who's playing here tonight? And he says, I am. And I said, you are? I said, oh, that's great. Do you have a harmonica player? Me, naively, I'm asking because I want to listen to harmonica. He said, no, do you play? And I said, well, I said, yes, but I'm just, yeah, I play. And he goes, you have one on you? And I said, yes. And he goes, okay, I'll call you up later. Get your harp tuned up. I was like, tuned up? What? I have to tune my harmonic? Like, I was so green. Anyway, he ended up inviting me up. Several tequila shots later, I got up on stage with him at the very end of the night. He was such a nice guy. In between his break, he would sit down and talk to me. And that was my introduction to playing music. My first time ever making music was with him. And I remember it was the scariest thing I had ever done in my life to that point, and also at the same time, the most exciting thing that I'd ever done. And I knew that night, I stayed up all night, and I remember thinking, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think everyone who does what we do has probably had a pivotal moment like that, where usually someone has kind of brought them in. I think that's really important. And unless you're one of those people who is confident enough to kind of make it happen yourself.
Yeah. Exactly. And the thing about it is that because he changed my life so profoundly, it has been a huge aspiration of mine to give back as much as I can as far as my knowledge, my excitement, my passion for music, and specifically the harmonica. So it's easy to do the work that I'm doing because I'm always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about how lucky I am to be able to give this experience that I got back to potentially not only a few people, but maybe hundreds or thousands of people at this point. That ripple just keeps going. And to me, the online preservation of all that is a large part of what makes it possible, because people can go back when I'm too old to do this or I'm not around and say, there's that guy that started posting these videos up, and, they don't know me from anywhere else, but this guy online, I'm just literally, they must think that I eat and live in like my office because that's how they know me, but I'm fine with that. I've been very fortunate that they've supported, everyone's given me enough support that I can continue to do this. So I feel very lucky.
Yeah, it's a very cool gig. You were saying that you've been posting videos since 2006, and I wanted to ask you about this. This is on my notes for today. Was it you or Adam who was first to start posting on YouTube? I was first, and I didn't know it until Adam told me. We were hanging out at a spa event, the first time we met in person, and we started chatting about YouTube. I forget how we got on the topic, but it probably wasn't that hard to get on the topic. And he said, did you know that you were first? And I go, what do you mean first? And he goes, right before I started posting videos in 2007, Adam said this. Before I started posting videos, I did a search.
And I only found one of the few things related on a harmonica on YouTube at the time. I found an old Sonny Boy clip, which was killer. And I found a bunch of just, horrible, like just people making noise on the harmonica. And then I found you, and that was it. There was no one else at that time putting out instructional content or just, jamming and stuff like that on YouTube. So you were the first. So he hit me to that. I didn't know that. And that's cool. I know that right around that time, so shortly after, Adam and maybe like Dan Gage and some other players began sharing and teaching regularly, actively. And I dropped off because I got distracted with life. But throughout the years, I've still somewhat consistently been posting, and more so nowadays. I'm inspired by people like you who have built a massive following on YouTube and on your website. And that proves that not only are you doing a great job as a consistent sort of marketer and putting yourself out there on YouTube, but you do a good job at teaching, and you have a process, which is an important part of teaching that people can follow, that they can expect. This is Tomlin's method for teaching. So I think that's inspiring, seeing people like you.
Thank you.
And Liam, people that have, came later in the game on the social media or YouTube platform, let's say specifically, but have made a massive impact. Kudos to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's kind of nuts for me to hear things like that, because I learned everything that I know from watching the first people posting videos on YouTube. So you and Adam and Dan. It's kind of nuts. I mean, I never thought that this was going to be what I was doing.
You didn't picture it quite as big as it's become.
Well, it was completely accidental. I mean, that there was definitely a point when I realized that it could be something worth pursuing aggressively. But it was just it was a service that I was doing for. I used to run a brick and mortar music school here in Edinburgh, and I was getting fed up of my students coming to lessons each week and saying, "Hey, I don't remember what we worked on last week." So I just started posting videos of after each lesson, and then said, "Look, here's a video for you to refer back to, so you know what you need to practice for next week." And then it was just I think it was. You'll laugh because I think you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. But I think it was Jerry in Texas who reached out to me through the YouTube channel. He's like, "Hey, do you do Skype lessons?" And I'm a musician, so hustle is in my nature. I was like, "Yeah, of course I do Skype lessons. I have no idea what Skype is."
I know. You're right. So, again, organically, it happened for you. My first video that I shared ever on YouTube was a video called Harmonica Improv or something like this. And the whole point of me putting it up was my girlfriend at the time, her sisters recommended, because I was trying to email it to like a family member or two to show them what I was doing. And she's like, "You can't email that." And, I didn't understand any of this. She's like, "There's this thing called YouTube," which had been out, I think, only less than a year at that point. Somewhere in 2005, YouTube began, I think. And so she said, "Go to YouTube and put it up there, and then you can get them. They can watch it." And that's the only reason I put that video up, was because of her and me trying to send it to a family member. And it's just cool. You never know. You know what the point of all this is? The most important message is put yourself out there, because you don't know who you're going to impact and who you might resonate with. All these people that just might learn something from you. And by being vulnerable and putting yourself out there, it allows you to make new connections. And the same applies with so many things in life. And I was saying that, in music, it's exactly that. It's the people that are vulnerable, the people that are willing to say, "I'm not all the way there, but I'm going to jump in the deep end. I'm not ready to play yet, but you know what? I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to try." So if you're a person in playing harmonica, my advice to you, and you've been telling yourself, "I'm not ready to jam yet. I'm not ready to go to that open mic or that blues," You're ready. Go do it. You've got to get up and go make a few mistakes, have an experience. You might shock yourself at how much fun it is and what you can actually do. The biggest thing I see with all my students is they have so much skill built up, but they're not putting it together all the way musically. And some of that comes from the lack of vulnerability. Music can be scary as hell, but you put yourself out there the first time, the second time's a little easier, and so on. People don't see how rapid that progression can be. So they just live in the wall of fear, I think, and they just allow it to paralyze them. So
do you not think that that's maybe the curse of the adult learner? Little kids are really good at making mistakes. That's kind of how they get good at stuff.
Why are kids good at making mistakes? Because they live in the moment, and because kids don't let their thoughts jump into that. They just live in the excitement of what might happen and what is happening. They're not thinking about any of the negative or possible impacts, like, will this person think I'm terrible? What if I play a bad note? Yeah, exactly. I do think it's an adulthood curse thing when it comes to learning music. But the coolest thing is that all walks of life, like any age, male or female, it doesn't matter. It is possible to change that. And I think a lot of it is how we were raised, how we learn as adults. We all learn a little bit differently. Some people process information, in one way, and the other person, it's a completely different method. So figuring out the way you process information is probably step one, and your teacher should be able to help you figure that out. And step two is being willing to trust that by literally just putting yourself out there, making a video, sharing it on social media, recording yourself and listening back, sharing it with a friend. Those are ways that you can get quick feedback. You start to gain confidence. It's all about gaining more and more confidence so that when I pick up my harmonica, I trust that the sound that is going to come out will be the sound I hear in my mind, because I've worked on the technique to support the sound. But getting to that point, the trust point, the confidence, takes putting out all sorts of stuff that's not so great.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You need to make mistakes fast. You need to kind of get out there and fall down hard and fast and repeatedly.
Yeah. Yes.
So that everyone needs to have the experience of playing very loud the wrong key harmonica on stage.
Oh, God.
Everyone needs to have that at least once.
You'll remember that.
Yeah, you'll always check your keys very carefully. And
I'm still guilty of that every once in a while.
Yeah, we all are. That's the thing. Like I love. I remember having a conference call. I think it was with you and Adam and David when we were preparing for the Global Blues Harmonica Summit. And David Barrett, he picks up his harmonica and does the thing that every student does multiple times a day, which is play hole 9 instead of hole 2 because the harmonica's upside down. And it was
funny. I don't remember that.
It struck me because David is the coolest guy on the harmonica. He's just so relaxed and he just oozes confidence. And then there was just that little see, we do it as well.
Yeah, and that's I think that is very comforting for the average player to know that everyone is making mistakes, whether you're catching or not. There's mistakes happening. There are unintentional things that just come out. And so you learn that that's just part of it. It's your ability to adapt and pivot in those moments and not let it bother you. I think that once you hit something on stage that you don't like the sound of, you interpret as like a hit, right? That's not the bend that I intended. That it's the domino effect of kind of that irritation living into the next note, the next note, the next note, the next note. Me, when I play, if I had a bad note, it's like I'm on a highway and I'm a kid looking out a window and I just see trees going by. It was just a tree. I was like, it's gone. Next. I'm so focused on what's happening that if I hit something bad, I pretend like I heard it the way that I intended and I keep moving. I can go back and try to unstick the reed if it was a stuck reed, tap it. But I'm so in the moment on where I am right now musically that those hiccups no longer impede my playing. They don't bug me at all, and I think that's something that's just experience and time. What do you think?
Oh, definitely. And I think it's, every single gig for, my first 500 gigs, there was a post-mortem afterwards in my mind of
Yeah.
like, why, and the worst gigs were the ones where people came up and said, wow, that was the best gig you've ever played. I was like, you know nothing, that was the worst gig I've ever played.
Yeah.
But you can't say
Totally.
that, because that's
Yeah.
really mean, and you just got to be like, oh, thank you so much, that's really kind, thank you.
It's true.
Whereas inside you're thinking, oh, I'm never doing that again. And if I've told the guitarist once, I've told him 1,000 times. There's no turnaround.
Yeah. But the other side of what you just said is that you have to listen to that feedback especially in the nights where you're like, that was awful, nothing went right. And then the person's like, man, you guys sounded great. There's validity. There is total validity in what they're saying. And you have to accept that on a certain level, you made a positive impact on somebody. So you almost have to let that permeate that negativity and go, okay, well, geez, I'm glad somebody, picked up on something that impacted them, and you did something right, even when you felt everything went wrong. I think that's the biggest thing. It's in our minds as we're playing, it's catastrophe zone. And out there to the listener, the average listener is not catching the majority of what's tripping you up.
No.
And it's all about staying focused on, the moment, man. Like we're back to the adulthood thing and the kids. Like they're so focused on the moment. They're not worried about any of that.
No, absolutely. And the other thing to remember is that nobody cares about the harmonica player or the guitarist or the bassist as much as the harmonica player cares about himself or herself. Like you're so hyper focused on your own playing,
right?
That people are listening to a band and they're listening to the musical whole, and that's what you need to be thinking about, is how do I contribute to the musical whole rather than how do I contribute to myself and my self-validation on stage.
That's a very good point. And that's a great way to approach music in general as a harmonica player specifically and really all musicians, but you have a role. And if you stop listening and hyper-focusing in on what it is only that you're doing and start listening to all the elements, you find your role very quickly. You hear where you're supposed to be quiet, where you should come in, how loud you should be, or what dynamically it's the music is telling you everything you need to know. You just need to listen carefully. And so maybe a good suggestion to people just getting into playing live is it's okay to be up there and have a moment of silence. Even when you're soloing, I think the fear is that I've got to say something the whole time. I've got to play this perfect solo. You could just go, you can wait for the next note. You play a chord or you do whatever. And then let's wait and, hear what that sounds like and how the band reacts to that. You just have to be comfortable being in your own skin on that stage. And then you'll be able to play what naturally comes to you. I think that takes a long time. I think that it's something that, I know for me, I'm still working always. I feel relaxed on stage, but I know that to bring out my best music, it's something that I constantly have to strive towards. Like, I still feel like I have a long way to go is what I'm saying. For example, I love to sing, but I know that I'm not the best singer out there, but I love singing. So I don't care. I'm going to sing. And I know that that's a focus area for me as an artist, right? Not just a harmonica player, but it's something that I think also would help the average harmonica player try to sing a little bit. And those are the types of things that I wish I had done really early in my playing, but I didn't do it until maybe like 5-6 years in. Like, I'm going to learn how to sing a song so I can relate to the song differently as a harmonica player.
I think that's huge. I think I talk about this tons with my students because I think one of the biggest issues with harmonica players, especially at the beginning, is the phrasing and learning how to leave space. Because unlike other wind instruments, you can breathe in, and then when you're too full, you can start breathing out, and you can just make noise constantly. And it doesn't necessarily make for a great listening experience. Whereas if you listen to singers and you become a singer, then you start noticing what phrasing is like and what really hooks an audience.
It's everything.
Yeah.
Singers are the biggest. I think for a harmonica player, it's the one thing you should be focusing on more than any other instrument are the vocals, because that's where the melody lives. As a harmonica player, even if you're not going to play that melody, you need to know it, because from it will stem your ideas. And so the way in which you present your ideas could relate to the melody, but not be the melody. There's so many variations of improvisation and performance and all this, and many angles that you can consider. But at the end of the day, you want to relate to like if there's one part of a song, you need to first examine, it's the melody. If there's a distinct melody going on, you need to know it. And I'm a big believer in that. For years, I'd never paid attention to that. And I still work on this. I think my next life, and when I say next life, I mean like this life, but like not this part of my life where I'm doing what I do now. I want to acquire more melody playing. I want to be able to, one song I've been working on that I'm still refining, but I can finally play it, is Black Orpheus on the Diatonic. Black Orpheus, P.T. Gazelle taught me. Sugar, which is a Stanley Turrentine song, I believe. These types of melodies, Sweet Georgia Brown, there's a couple others. They're so beautiful, and I'm not an overdraw player, but when I play on these songs that don't require those notes, and they swing and they have these gorgeous melody lines, it is such a challenge for me, but it is so rewarding to be able to play the melody.
I think, yeah, melody is a huge one. I'm going to take this and pivot it slightly, because I think one of the things that's quite difficult as an online teacher versus an in-person teacher is really being able to dictate how someone learns. And that sounds very pushy and aggressive, but we've chatted about a couple of things that students might, if they're left to their own devices, won't necessarily want to spend the time doing because it's not the fun, sexy thing. And that's certainly something that I really struggle with. It's because if I have an in-person student, like from day one, I get them playing with a guitarist. I get them used to jamming, but I can't do that online. I can say, watch this video of me playing guitar and play along with it, but I don't know if they're doing it. And similarly, you've described getting people to learn melodies and what that does for you as a player is huge, but there are so few role models of that type of playing on harmonica. I mean, they're there, but people are listening still to the very kind of classic blues, and they've discovered the 4-draw, and everything's great.
Yeah.
And it's all about the fun. Like how do you kind of enforce those important, the melody? Well, just the fun, the things that are important.
Excuse me. Well, so if you're asking me how do I enforce melody in an area where somebody wants to learn blues, harmonica improvisation, their goal is that, but I'm trying to get them to play a melody. Mm-hmm. I think I focus on the bluesiness of the melody. So I put them in second position. So you have to be able to get them playing a little bit of that. And then they're like, ooh, that's bluesy. That's kind of what I want to do. Yeah, you're learning a melody. Let's move on to another one. Bring in the bluesy elements, the warbles, the hand wah and all this. And then they go, ooh, this is really fun. And then they start to explore on their own the melody side, but from the lens of bluesy, the blues perspective with the nuances of the blues, the techniques we think of. And so for me, that's one way to get somebody interested, is let them hear it, first of all. Mm-hmm. Get them working on it. But yeah, there are many other elements besides the whole melody, not to leave it, but like melody is an important one. It's like one important thing I've been thinking about lately is order of operations for a musician in general. Like what is priority number one for beginners on? And like, to my mind, one of the first things I think of is sound, producing a sound that is pleasant to your ears, tone. Secondly, timing and rhythm. Those are the elements together. If you have good sound that you can appreciate on your own instrument and you focus on just making one note or one chord just sound pleasing by focusing on your breath as a harmonica player, let's say, controlling it, relaxing, then you can naturally, organically evolve your music. You can bring in rhythm. You can learn a chug. But without the basic elements there, I've been thinking a lot about what are the other ingredients that keep you focused, but in the right areas early on. Because that's the thing, man. Now everyone's distracted with YouTube and Facebook and all that. It's easy to watch 50 videos and learn nothing. There's so much free content. I always say to people, they're like, you give away so much, and all these people are there's already too much to learn. Okay, so where are you going to start? How are you going to organize it? How do you get feedback? A coach is good because a coach can listen to you and help you dial that kind of stuff in and say, let me help you. You just described 50 things you're trying to work on. That's why you've gotten almost nowhere with any of this. So kind of like taking stock of your strengths and weaknesses and prioritizing and organizing. It's a big job for us, I know, as teachers, but the student has to do a lot of this work. If I say to you, this is how you're going to do it, it may or may not jive with you. But if you sit down and say, I know what I want to be doing and what I need to be doing to get there, then you can start to assimilate with the help of somebody a good method. But it's got to come from, I think, the student, the player first, because that's where it's relevant to them. Like, I never liked being taught by somebody that's like, this is the way it's done and do this. And I need a little bit of flexibility there as a learner to say, but I don't really want that. Well, they say, well, if you really want this, you may really want that. Then there's a conversation to have. But like, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this tangent. How did this happen?
No, I'm interested in the kind of the online teaching and kind of pre-recorded content where people can do the kind of the pick and mix approach.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a positive, because there are those things like, breathing and relaxing. That will make 90% of the players out there instantly better if they just focus on those two things.
Yeah, no doubt.
But it's not sexy, and it's also something that's quite difficult to really understand how you can work on it, because a lot of it is not with the harmonica in your hands. It's putting the instrument down and relaxing and thinking about the breath and kind of getting yourself into that mindset before you even touch the instrument.
That's the word I was going to say, mindset. So breathing, it comes from your mindset. When you're scared, your breathing goes to hell. When you're nervous, your breathing is off. Your heart rate increases. And I think it begins with the mindset. So a better way to think about practicing breathing is also to practice mindset, meditation, walking. One thing I recommend to my students all the time that's kind of related to what we're talking about is walking in time to the pieces of music they're working on. So I have them take a walk, and you can double time or half time walk, but it's still got to be within some sort of rhythm to syncopation you've got to be in rhythm to what you're walking to. So if the beat is, that's your right, left foot making contact with the ground. Mm-hmm. And getting these people to just tune into this relaxed state of mind of listening and observing first. It does correlate back to the breath, though, because by not picking up the instrument to distract your listening opportunity, your active listening, you can relax. You can focus on these long, relaxed, breaths in and out. While you're doing that, you can practice pulsing your air. 1, 2, 3 in, triplets in and out. You can do long breaths in, long breaths out. You could practice holding your breath. Take a slow breath in, hold it for 5 seconds, slow breath out, release, let it sit and rest for 5 seconds before you take your breath in. Those are standard breathing meditation practices that anybody could find on the internet anyway. I'm sharing that I do these things because there's more to the music than just trying to make it. It's influencing all of that. Like the breathing is a big part, but it's mindset. So here's an interesting topic. When you get on stage as a beginner, all that goes out the window. How do you control nerves? Because then it screws up your breathing, and then you can't even do what little you thought you could do, right? That you were ready to do, and you're just so flustered that it's the worst for a wind instrument to have your breathing go out. So what do? I tell beginners, play a note and hold it. Stay somewhere. Stop moving around. Focus on a long inhale. Let your heart beat fast. Notice it. And then just take a breath and out, stop playing for a minute. Just notice it. And then if you keep focusing on these longer notes, your heart rate will slow down. And then you can start to have a moment of relaxation where you can go for that one little riff you've been working on. There's so much that's going on in a diatonic. It's ridiculous. You can't see or show anybody all of the nuance of what we do, right? And it's like inside of this thing or in your mouth, whatever, however you want to think about it. It's like a whole nother world of detail happening that it's so complex that we need this relaxed breathing to even have a chance to take advantage of all that.
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, how many times have you had a student come in and they're super excited because they've been practicing what you sent them away to do, and then they play it and it goes out the window, and they say, I don't understand what happened. Every time I play it at home, it's perfect.
Yes, all the time. And so that's another side of being vulnerable. And like back to what we were talking about earlier is like the art of just practicing feeling uncomfortable more often so that you can gain confidence. Isn't that what it's all about? Like, haven't you witnessed a great performance of somebody that was just average as far as their ability? I have, but man, they delivered because the way they set it up was so relaxed. The way when they chose to play and not to play was perfect. They had a good sound. They weren't doing anything musically that was overstimulating me or even stimulating me on a higher level. But what they did do right was the performance and the connection. And yeah, it's very interesting, man. But the mindset's a big one. How do you get there? You put yourself in that position as much as you can. You get out and you do the thing. The one thing I did right, man, from the very beginning was, and it was an accident, it was luck. I moved in to a house. I rented a room in Austin, Texas, right after I graduated. His name was Sergio, and Sergio was a great shuffle player. He played acoustic guitar all day. He just sat around and played blues. How lucky was I? I was a beginner harmonica player. Every night we jammed. You don't think that was instrumental to my development? Like, it totally was for me.
It's huge. It's huge having something like that. I mean, I started playing harmonica 2006, and I was living with a bunch of musicians, and we were students, and we had no money for beer, so we went out on the street and we busked, and I couldn't play harmonica. I'd been playing for a couple of weeks, but right. If you do that every day for 2 or 3 hours, you get better very quickly. It's huge. You kind of it's difficult to make that happen, I think, if it's something that you're doing for an hour at the weekend. That's the only thing that I'm not sure how you can kind of recreate that, because it would be difficult for me if I was starting something new now to put that amount of time into it, and I'm sure it would be similar to you.
Yeah, it would, man. It was all about exploration in the early days. It was like I was so excited to just have found something that allowed me to express myself. I mean, it sounds cheesy to say it, but like it was and still is my religion. It was the thing that I said, man, this makes sense. Like, I don't even understand it yet, but I'm going to try to figure out why it makes so much sense to me. And it was the thing that allowed me to be who I am. And it sounds weird to say that, but it's true. It's allowed me to just be who I am and just be comfortable being who I am and sharing my gift, my passion with other people. I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing in this world than what I'm doing right now. And so, yeah, I think about that every day when I get up. But you can't recreate. Your early experiences are all about exploration, right? I mean, for me, I was like completely obsessed with just every day. I'd fall asleep in bed with the harmonica. I'd wake up and like have like, what's poking in my neck? It was a harmonica. I did that often, and it was just, I was obsessed. Like I think a lot of people are early on. That's a healthy habit as a beginner, to be a little bit obsessed with what you're doing. And just my advice is take the time to like have fun with no structure too. Find sounds, just explore, and let it be a struggle until it's not. Like the riff that you're like, those notes are not on my harmonica. For me, that was Sonny Boy Williamson who did that to me. But I remember sitting there listening for over and over going, why can't I play that note? I want to be able to play that riff right here. What was the riff? That was the riff. That little, I couldn't figure out for the life of me that it was a half step bend on the 3. And I said, well, he's got a special harmonica or something, or I don't know. But you figure it out,
Yeah, so true. I love that thought. I think we've all had it. He's got a special harmonica.
There's something going on here. I thought it was a C, but he must be on a specially tuned. No, he wasn't. There's just so much to learn that it becomes back to what we were saying earlier. It's an overwhelming amount of information. We're inundated in general with just information, and it's overload. So if you're trying to get good at making music, you got to get focused on one thing at a time. You got to connect with people you can trust, that inspire you, and that have the knowledge that you can trust to guide you, so that you're not spinning your wheels. I spent way too much time doing that, just exploring before I was like, okay, time to get down to business and like get focused.
Yeah. Well, I think this is probably a really good point to segue, because we're talking about people that we can trust to educate us about harmonica, and you put together something very, very cool. Once again, taking advantage of new technologies in the Global Blues Harmonica Summit. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how that got started, what it is, and what's coming up with it?
Yeah. It got started when you and I and Adam Gusso and David Barrett, I had the idea to bring us all together in a platform that I had been using for years. Believe it or not, years teaching in, that no one cared about, no one was paying attention to. I mean, I did. I had fans that joined my monthly subscription. It just wasn't clicking. The technology wasn't clicking, and no one really understood it. Everyone was scared of it. I thought, what if I bring my buddies in here and we do this global thing? Tomlin's out there, in Scott. We're bringing people from different parts of the country and the world together, and we'll have this online event. And that was beautiful. I don't remember what year that was exactly right now, but it was many years back at this point, several years. Do you know what year?
I think it must have been 2017 or maybe 2016.
Yeah, it might
16,
have been
17.
In that zone. So I say many years, not that long ago, but it feels like a long time ago, because since then I've been doing similar events, maybe not with 4 of us teaching, but 2 to 3 often, or a featured guest artist. And this online platform, which is an interactive experience, allows students to join the webinar. That's what it is. It's a webinar. And they have access to a chat box, so that when they hear things going on and they say, well, I need to ask that question, they can jump in and ask questions. So I've been very fortunate to feature, I'm trying to look something up right here, but I've been fortunate enough to feature artists like Adam, yourself, David, Richard Slay, Dennis Grunling, Sam Friedman, all these wonderful players, Kim Wilson, hello. It's just been amazing. And on May 2nd, the great Howard Levy's joining me for the next summit, and I've got it on sale right now. So that's exciting. I'm really pumped to have him. Here's a guy, if you don't know who he is, you need to look up Howard Levy. He's transformed the instrument on a tremendously high level. He's considered probably the best living diatonic player out there.
Howard Levy is a total animal, like just unbelievable. When I've watched him play, I was just like he definitely has a different harmonica to me.
Yeah, his comes from outer space, and ours absolutely not. His mind comes from outer space, probably his musical mind. He is a piano player, and so he visualizes on the harmonica a piano layout when he plays. He sees a piano, and I've heard him talk about this. So it's fascinating. That's all it is to him. It's a piano. He literally, as he's playing, he watches where that would be on the piano. So he's taking advantage of every note because it's a chromatic instrument. So he plays a diatonic fully chromatic by taking advantage of the overblows, the overdraws. These are notes that raise the pitch rather than flatten it like a bend. And so it's incredible to listen to the way he has put it together in world music, and he plays everything. Every style you can think of, from Yiddish music to gypsy jazz to folk music to blues. You just name it, he's done it, and he's probably recorded it too. I think he's got a massive collection of recordings out there. So what we're going to do in the summit is hang out, not only have him teach a session on learning jazzy blues and bluesy jazz and alternate positions and how to bluesify those zones of jazzy positions that people think of as more jazz oriented, how to make them more bluesy, and vice versa, how to jazzify the bluesy sort of positions. And he's going to perform where he does the thing where he plays piano at the same time while he plays harmonica. So
that's going to be
it's going to be fun.
That's going to be very, very cool.
Please remind me to send you a personal invitation. You're personally invited to all these events as a guest of mine.
Well, I'll be coming. I'll be coming anyway. But I'm going to link that up in the show notes, and I highly encourage people to check it out. And one concern that I know a lot of people have with these kind of online events is, what do I do if I can't join live?
Yeah, they're recorded, so everything is preserved. Whether you show up or not, you still get a link in your email that night or the next morning that contains the recording of the entire event. You can download it or stream it, or both. Do whatever you'd like with it, and then you've got it on your computer to go back and practice along with, as long as you're around.
It's so cool. I mean, I think that I started learning harmonica at a point where it was probably starting to get a lot easier. But I think now it's even easier, with those kind of online summits and all the teachers putting out YouTube videos and things. I think that there's no excuse anymore to not get good, because everything you need is out there, and I think it's very. And
the technology is also evolving. Like, I look back to the summit we did, the quality that we got on the recording versus some of the quality that I can get now with different platforms and different tools. It's getting to where it makes sense to do this, and not only makes sense, but like, you can see each other more clearly. You can hear each other better. So the technology is allowing us to actually communicate effectively enough to where the learner can get a lot from these sessions. It just simply wasn't made available because the technology wasn't there back in the day. You're lucky to find even a harmonica teacher in your hometown. My experience was one that I had to hunt before I found the one guy or two guys, the total, but that were teaching where I lived in Austin, and that was Michael Rubin and JP Allen. Coincidentally, they lived in Austin, Texas when I lived there. JP left shortly after to move to Hawaii, but JP was the first teacher, and then Michael Rubin was the second one. I bet everyone has heard of these teachers out there floating around, but yeah, it's kind of cool what we have now. Especially things like the podcast is a good example too.
Oh, thank you. Cool. Well, I think that this is probably a kind of good spot to start wrapping things up. Before we do, though, is there anything else that you want me to promote or talk about, or anything you want to say?
Nah, just, you keep doing what you're doing. We're going to keep this thing going. We're going to try to support each other and get through this mess we're in right now. And if people do want to find out what I do, I'm at harmonica123.com. I like to spend my time putting videos out on YouTube, offering some online classes and these summits. So that's the focus for me, and appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for coming along. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you.
You too, man.
I got to say, everything that has been spoken about will be linked up in the show notes, including harmonica123.com. And you really, really, really should check out Ronnie. And if you're kind of on the fence about getting Skype lessons, do get in touch with him, because he will do wonders for your playing. He'll kind of build a curriculum around exactly what you want to be working on. And he's kind of perfect teacher / mentor, so definitely worth checking out. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Tomlin.
Cheers. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tomlin's Harmonica podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. Join me next Monday for the next episode. Happy harping!